All right, guys, it's Jay Lee here with Northwest Podcast. I want to talk about promiscuity and its effects. I'm going to try to open up this concept a little bit and just expound on my experience with it and what I view and what I see in the environment. And when I say the environment, I mean particularly the Western culture, which is one of the biggest cultures that is influenced by feminism and is influenced by, mainstream promiscuity. Now, if you look at other countries, they definitely have promiscuity, say Eastern Europe or Italy or Russia, etc. There's definitely promiscuity, but it's a different kind. It's not looked at in the same aspect. The reason why I want to talk about it from the Western culture is because in the West, there's a lot of emphasis on hypergamy. There's a lot of emphasis on sex's leverage, social leverage, financial leverage, friend group leverage, power dynamic, etc. And it's just a whole different ballgame when you're talking about the West, from what I've experienced. Now, granted, I haven't traveled a lot, so I'm sure that this sort of hypergamy and feminism, etc., has influenced these other cultures to an extent, and they've all followed the West, particularly countries like India and Japan. They have followed the West when it comes to our mainstream Hollywood culture, our film culture, even our porn culture, to an extent, our music culture to a great extent, and particularly our economic culture with the greed and the lust and the more type of mentality that they have here in the West. So, but with that said, other countries are still other countries, and they have their own particular culture when it comes to sex. For instance, Japan, actually, there's a lack of sex epidemic. People are not intermingling and having a lot of sex. People are not marrying. It's not even a mgtow movement. It's just become, for some reason, part of their culture in Japan. Now, India has a lot of influence recently from feminism, and there's a lot of rape in India, but there's also a lot of other factors such as hygiene, and they have trouble. And there's just there's overpopulation. There's so many people, as well as China. There's overpopulation, right? So these things you got to factor in, right? But say, for instance, like Eastern Europe, or say Romania, Ukraine, Russia, Italy, France. These types of cultures have a more laissez-faire type of feeling when it comes to sex. It's more normal. It's more commonplace. It's not looked at in the same way, right? But when we're talking about the West, the promiscuity culture is linked to feminism. It's linked to hypergamy, particularly linked to finances and resources and things like that. So I want to talk about it a little bit from that angle, but also more so, I want to talk about the hypocrisy there. There's a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to women having sex with men. There's a lot of double standards. Obviously, we all know these things. There's, the double standard of, if you're going to be a bad boy, women will sleep with you easily. But if you want to love them and marry them, then all of a sudden they default back into this hypergamous, mindset and attitude. Whereas, like, if you're just going to be a bad boy, you just want to have sex with them, they will easily entertain that, after you get through shit testing or whatever. But if you want to love them, or you want to date them or court them or actually marry them, then all of a sudden this hypergamous mindset, and then this princess narrative comes in, and then this, wanting to find a prince, and then all this, and he's got to wine and dine her, all this nonsense that comes in, right? So this is the hypocritical aspect of this culture, of the promiscuity culture. So on the one hand, these women will be sleeping around on the side with, the bad boys, the guys who are the ne'er-do-wells, right? But they are cool, and they've figured out how to talk to the girls, and they figured out how to communicate that they just want sex, and it's called hookup culture, right? I have been a proponent of that in the past, so I know what I'm talking about. I'm not coming at this from an incel perspective. I'm not coming at this from an even strictly mgtow perspective or a red pill perspective. Just, well, it is more or less red pill perspective, but I'm not coming at this from somebody who has no experience with that. I've got a great deal of experience with that, you know, over a decade of experience with that. So I know what it is. I've had success in that arena. And so I know exactly what I'm talking about with a hookup culture. So there's, but see, these same women who are proponents of the hookup culture, when it comes to wanting love or finding love, they will be absolutely hypocritical and put men through way more rigorous standards as opposed to, you know, their standards for just casual sex, right? So this is the hypocrisy there. And say, you know, France or Eastern Europe, and some of you guys out there might know and have more experiences with those countries, and you might have a different perspective. But from what I've seen, you know, Europe and et cetera, it's more laissez-faire, meaning they don't necessarily go for bad boys. It's if it's more natural. It's almost like a friendship. Well, if you're attracted to the girl, she's attracted to you, and you guys, you know, get along, you guys get on, and you guys have a friendship, then you just go have sex. It's just normal and natural. Whereas in the West, there's not really a friend dynamic. There's a sort of deception dynamic where one party is trying to deceive the other, and both parties are, you know, essentially benefiting sexually from the exchange. Whereas there's not really a lot of friendship exchange there. It's more so just you know, sort of, like I said, a hookup dynamic, right? The bad boy comes, or the quote unquote bad boy comes over, talks her up, they go have sex, he leaves, right? That's just essentially what it is. That's I did that for years, so I know what these type of women are. I know how to spot these type of women, and there's a lot of these type of women, and there's different classes. There's the really loose ones, the really slutty, nasty ones, and then there's ones that are more covert, ones you wouldn't know are actually, you know, proponents of that kind of culture. So there's levels, there's tiers, there's classes, so to speak. And I wouldn't say they're all doing it, but it's very common. It's just that because we have this hypocritical culture, it's not like Eastern Europe. It's not like, you know, Russia, etc., where if you like somebody, you just do it, and there's no, like, no one cares. But over here, it's like you got to be sneaky, and you got to live this certain type of lifestyle. It's all under the radar. It's all hidden because it's stigmatized, right? So, with that said, is that a good thing? It's absolutely not a good thing. It's absolutely incongruent with, you know, it's incompatible with society as a whole. And so I believe we have a damaged society. I believe that our society is limping along. It's hurting. The nuclear family is hurting. The children are hurting. Men who have good intentions are hurting. You know, because there's such a hypocrisy there, because there's such a culture where on the one hand there's this hookup culture, then on the other hand, if you flip it around, she's got super high standards when it comes to love and marriage, and essentially she will fall back into that same pattern, that hookup pattern. You know, one of my subscribers, or one of my viewers, made a wonderful comment on my last video saying that it ruins these women. It happens at a young age, and it just ruins them, and they don't know any better. And this is what I see. I absolutely see this. I see that they're just damaged, and the parents fail. The parents fail to raise them, right? And there's just damage there. Of all the girls that I've hooked up with throughout the last 10 years or so, when I was really heavy into my hookup phase, really none of them had values. Only a few had both parents, and most of them were damaged by bad parenting. Most of them come from dysfunctional families. Yet these same girls, when I wanted to fall for them, or when I got serious, or when I caught feelings, or when I wanted to have a long-term relationship, would turn around and friend zone me, and they would say, "You're not good enough," or you don't make enough money for me, etc. So it's like when I was just giving them good dick and I was just fucking them right, it was all good. But when I wanted to love them, then it's like, oh, they had these huge standards. So it's like there's really I don't know if disconnect is the right word, but there's really a problem in their mentality, right? They're really damaged, very damaged women who would have the audacity to to on the one hand sleep with a bunch of guys, and then on the other hand turn around and act like they deserve some kind of wonderful man. It's preposterous, really. You have these girls who, for all intents and purposes, are just ghetto. They're not the best looking girls. They're not the best, because the good looking girls, they have more sexual market value. So therefore they can use their looks to get ahead in life. And many do. A girl who's really attractive, who's living in poverty and kind of living a low level life, she's really not using her advantages, because it's a statistic that people who are better looking are more successful in life. So most of these girls are lower class looking, yet they're sexy enough to hook up. They're sexy enough to get a consistent flow of men coming to hang out with them, to have sex, etc. And this is 100% what I've experienced over the years. All these women, they just have a steady flow of men coming and going, coming and going, coming and going. They have men in rotation, men in a circular rotation, hooking up with one guy for a few months. Oh, I got bored with him. I stopped liking him, etc. Let me jump on to the next guy. Got hooked up with him for a few months, got bored, jump on to the next guy. And this continuous cycle goes on and on and on and on. And this is what I've experienced. And I just was one of those guys. I was one of those guys in rotation. And I know how to do that. I know how to get to that level. Be reasonably attractive, be reasonably in shape, dress reasonably well, and act like a bad boy. But here's the thing is, you got to be disconnected from her social group, disconnected from her. She doesn't want to be attached to you. She wants you to go home. She wants to have sex with you, and she wants you to go home. And that's it. Once there's an attachment's made, then she's going to friend zone you, or she's going to put some incredible standards on you, or she might catch feelings. I've had girls catch feelings on me before, and we might have dated for a while, but invariably it never works out, because these girls are always messed up, because girls who hook up are messed up in some way. Not always, not in every case, but like I said, there's classes. So there's higher class women who are still proponents of that hookup culture. It's just they do it on a higher class level. They hook up with higher class men. They hook up with, their affairs are a different type of affair. It's more safe. It's more structured. They might even get STD tests before they start hooking up with somebody. They might still use condoms. They might have all these lists of things that they, go over before they enter into that arrangement, enter into that, agreement. But it's still promiscuity when you break it down. It's still essentially the same thing when you break it down. It just might not be as loose. It might not be as damaging or dangerous type of sex. And it might be more higher class, but it's essentially the same thing. They're still a proponent of hookup culture. And that even is more deceptive in a sense, because certain types of women, you can't tell if they're, loose women. Certain types of women, like a girl working at a supermarket, or a girl who's a waiter, you don't know. You think, oh, well, she's just trying to work her way up, or she's going to college part-time, or she seems to have this character and this standard, and she will do everything that she can to not come across like she's a loose girl. And this is a form of trickery. It's almost better to have a girl to just be honest and open about it. It's almost better to have a girl who's like, yeah, I'm a slut. It is what it is. I don't care. It's almost better, because it's like, okay, I can categorize you. I don't have, there's no doubt there. There's no trickery going on, right? The ones who are pretending to be a certain type of girl, pretending to be high class, etc., and yet they're messing around on the side, they might even be worse than those other girls. They might even be worse than those girls who are like, yeah, I'm a slut, I like sex, whatever, I take it where I can get it. They might even be worse. They might have more lovers that, they might have more hookup dudes. They might have, more, because they attract more men. Some of those girls who are lower class, they get friend zoned a lot. Guys don't want to mess with them, because guys are like, I'm not going to mess with that girl. She might have an STD. She's loose. She probably wants to get pregnant. I'm not going to mess with that. It's a lot of drama. You know what I mean? So guys will skip over those lower class, those lower class hookups, jump right over to the higher class hookups. The girls who are pretending to be Miss Sweetie or Miss, I'm Miss Character or whatever at work. But when I come home, I got 4 or 5 guys I'm hooking up with. You don't know, man. So I'm saying this Western culture, it's all under the rug. It's all hidden. And a lot of where you can see it is on porn. You turn on porn and there's just millions of videos, millions and millions of girls in America, and they're all doing it, man. This is the culture. It's not just hookup culture, it's porn culture in the West, in America. And this is damaging. This is damaging, horribly damaging to the nuclear family, horribly damaging to men who want to settle down and find love. Because when you want to settle down and find love, then all of a sudden they got all these standards. Because truth be told, they don't want to give up that hookup culture. Truth be told, they don't want to fall back and, oh, I only want one guy. They want to play the field for as long as they can until they hit the wall, until they get, old and fat, 30, 35, and then they start to get scared. Like, oh gosh, I need to have a baby. I think another YouTuber called it babyitis or something, where they just feel like I gotta breed, I gotta have a baby, I'm getting old. And that's what it is. Until then, it's just hookup after 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 hookup. And they might call it dating. I'm dating. You're dating a guy for 3 months. And then you jump to another guy, and they're dating another guy for 3 months. I'm dating another guy for 3 months. I'm dating another guy for 3 months. I'm dating this guy for 6 months. Oh, I caught feelings for this guy and dated him for a year, and we had a bad breakup. Jump right back on the cock carousel after that. Dating a guy for 3 months, dating a guy for 3 months. This is what it is until they hit 30, 35, until they lose their sexual market value. Meanwhile, there's lots of men out here who want to find love, and they don't have that same kind of sexual market value. They don't have that same kind of power over sex. Some of them might have resources, and some of them might be able to barter and leverage with their resources because women are hypergamous. These men might have a little bit, maybe even a lot more choices. They might have higher standards. They might have a better pick of the fruit, so to speak, right? But that's not everybody. And those men, even they want love. And then how can you trust a woman? Because if you have a higher financial standard than other men, you can never trust a woman because you're always going to be in the back of your mind, she just wants me for my money. She just likes me for my money. I remember when I was broke and no girl messed with me. Now that I'm making $100K a year, all the girls want to get with me because I got a nice car and I got a nice house and I'm so much different than all the other guys, right? So they put you in these categories and they chase you based on those categories. Oh, once you make 100K, then it's green light. Oh, I want him to marry me. I'm going to do everything I can to get pregnant. I'm going to do everything I can to have him fall in love with me. I'm going to treat him wonderful. Whereas she treats all the other guys who are lower class like shit. See how that works? So this is promiscuity culture. This is culture in the West. This is Western culture. This is what it is. And it's a failure of society to give women checks and balances. It's a failure of genuine equality. So how can you say, oh, we're the oppressed gender and we want equality and all this stuff, when in reality you are enjoying double standards in the sexual market. You are enjoying double standards with things like affirmative action, and more women are graduating college now probably because they get passed on easier in classes. They get better grades because they're women, So there's societal benefits that they're not being honest about, and yet they still claim that they're a victim, and they still claim that they're the oppressed gender, when really that's just leverage. That's just, that's just bartering tool to get what they want. So this is the environment that we live in the West, and what's going to change it? Well, we need to start having checks and balances. Men need to start having standards. Parents need to start raising their daughters better. We need to ditch this old hypergamous, zone that we've been living in. Ditch it. Ditch the whole idea that a man with a higher money and class value, he's the one who gets, all the women. That needs to go. And women need to start taking accountability, start taking responsibility. The only way that's going to happen is if men put their foot down and say, no, I'm not going to mess around. I'm not going to date a slut. I'm not going to wife a girl who's got a track record of being a hoe for 10 years. I'm not going to settle down with girls just because they want me for my money. I'm not going to cave in. I'm not going to do that. and the parents need to raise their children better. Parents need to raise our women better. So that's my solution, but it's a quick one. At any rate, for now, it's Jay Lee, Northwest Podcast. Thanks for listening.